Crystal Hall, they're trying to come up with something different. So. Yeah, that was bad. Hasn't been that long. Yeah. They use a different material. They're gonna try one more. This is second. I'm trying to. Yeah. Something must be different. Moisture or something. Yeah, because that one caused him to log in. Oh, okay. Ah. Should we start with that one? You've got your little thingy for the... Good evening. I call this Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, February 26, 2019 to order. My name is Janet Godwin, and I want to thank those in the audience, those watching on YouTube, and those following on Twitter for joining us tonight. I'll start by introducing those at the table with me. To my right, Superintendent Steve Murley, Directors Ruthina Malone, Phil Hemingway, Lori Rotland, Paul Ressler, Sean Eystone, and J.P. Clausen, and Kim Colvin, Recording Secretary. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. And moving into our agenda this evening, first up, we have Brady Shutt from ICEA.
President Godwin, Directors, Superintendent Murley, I appreciate you swapping me out from the dates. That was a little dicey where I live. So I have just two thank yous and one announcement. I'd like to, here we are, sort of mid-year, and we're starting to prepare for the new assessments that we'll take statewide. And they are, as you know, tech heavy. So I see Adam here. I know his team will be working hard on that. And just sort of, as I had a conversation today, it reminded me of all of the work that Adam and his team do for us across the district and getting everything ready. So just a public thank you very much for that, and good luck in April. So,
Godspeed.
Also, I'd like to, Monique Kottman and Megan Johnson are going to be community organizers for ICEA. We were the recipients of a grant from the National Education Association and the Iowa State Education Association. So they're going to be doing some work for us, including community outreach. So we're very excited about that. And as part of that, we went to a training, and I sent this in email, but I just want the public to know. One of the activities we did was, there were probably 14 local organizations there, teachers' unions and associations, and we put up our accomplishments around the room. And then everyone sort of got to see what was happening. And I always say that we have the strongest partnership in the state of Iowa, and I stand by that, and it was very nice to see some real visual evidence of it. So I'd just like to publicly say, thank you at the top of our list for many of the things that we've done with our, board of directors and with our administrative teams. And it was, the people around the room looked on with a great deal of awe and envy. So thank you very much for that. Thanks.
And thank you for your part of that too, Brady, and your team. Thank you. Next up is community comment. Did we have any community comment speakers this evening? Okay. We'll move into agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve our agenda this evening?
So moved.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote? Online voting is open.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up, the consent agenda. Phil, do you want to give a run of the bills, and who else looked at them this week? And Ruthina, thank you.
Great. We had $1.5 million in spending. 327,000 of that was out of Go Bond. We had, let's see, some things of interest. We had some weather-related. We had some tow bills, prison industry purchases, which we have quite often. We reimbursed a staffer for torn boots, and saw that we purchased some whisk brooms online from Amazon after we sold 100 of them online for 11 cents a piece. So that was a concern. But all questions were answered and everything along those lines.
Thank you. Anything, Ruthina, from your standpoint?
No, I had questions, and I believe the entire board. It was regarding a late call charge that we had, and that was explained because it was called after the drivers had shown up, and some questions about energy bills, and we'll be reimbursed for those energy bills that's being acquired at Man after the construction is done.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil and Ruthina. Any items to be pulled from consent?
I'd like to pull item 3.
I'd like to pull 12 and 13.
Anything else? Is there a motion to approve consent?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, less items. What was yours, Paul? 3?
3.
3, 12, and 13.
Second.
Is there a personnel update, though? We want to.
I pulled it.
Oh, you pulled it. Okay, great. Okay, Kim, we're ready to vote. Thanks.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Thanks, Kim. Item 3.
I'd like to actually move to approve the personnel report with the removal of Julie Peterson from the report.
Is there a second?
I'll second it just for the sake of discussion. Are we able to have more information on that?
Chase.
Yes, thank you for pulling that, Paul. Ms. Peterson had initially submitted her paperwork for retirement, and part of our early retirement program is we let people rescind that request up until the board approves that. That request came to us after the board agenda was published, and so we need to make the correction here on the record.
Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Items 12 and 13, are they going together, Lori?
Yeah, those can go together. I just wanted to explain that I'm going to be voting no on those. The contract that we're using for the HVAC is the same contract that we used for 3 items on the consent agenda at the last meeting, going to SystemWorks. Also, we've used SystemWorks on 12 other projects that are listed here. In addition, I added up the amount of money, and it's quite significant. I understand that this is not something that we're mandated to bid out, but at the amount of money that we're spending right now on our projects, I would like to see us put this out for competitive bid, especially when it's all going to the same company.
I agree with that as well. Just because it's below the threshold doesn't mean that we can't require competitive bidding. And even if we have a preferred vendor, that can always be taken into consideration when awards are given to the lowest reasonable, reputable bidder.
And just to inform the audience, I did ask this question ahead and was informed that it is possible that this can be competitively bid and that they're going to look at that in the future. Thank you for that.
I move that we approve items number 12 and number 13 as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Directors Rotland and Hemingway voting nay.
Thank you. Next up are two public hearings. The first, the Liberty High School Phase 3 project.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the Liberty High School Phase 3 project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on February 12, 2019. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on February 13, 2019. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. March 12, 2019 at the Facilities Management Office located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on February 13, 2019. Are there any questions from the board?
What are the career and tech facilities that will be part of Phase 3, and what will be considered STEM curriculum classrooms, and what will be considered career and tech, and are we doing anything to make room for ag education?
Well, excuse me, the design's been presented previously, but it does include some science rooms that can be used for STEM classrooms, I'm sure. In terms of an actual career tech program, to my knowledge, there are none. And there's no accommodations in this classroom addition for any type of ag education unless they choose to repurpose a science room, which that's a decision they'd make at the school level, not mine. And the purpose of this addition is to add 500 more seats for that school because they're growing. They're about 3 years ahead of schedule.
One thing, excuse me, one thing to remember would be that we already have a full suite on career and technical education with industrial tech, FCS, and business classrooms at Liberty High School. So this is an extension of some classrooms. We've talked before about ag and the potential for that and what those classroom spaces will need to look like as we develop that program. We don't have an idea of that yet, but we are running existing CTE programming in Liberty with those facilities.
And then I just add that this Phase 3 is part of the original design process, and so when they went through that original design process, they actually scoped out the entire building and made their projections for the demand for academic classrooms at that point in time. And remember, we did it in 3 phases because at that point in time we were unable to, we wouldn't be able to fully fund it at the beginning, and we also recognized that we were going to grow into the population of students. And so this was initially designed as a complement to the academic wing that's there currently.
Any questions from?
Any questions from the public?
Okay, thank you. That public hearing is closed. Next up, Tate High School Edition.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the Tate High Edition project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on February 12, 2019. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on February 13, 2019. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. March 13, 2019 at the Educational Services Center located at 1725 North Dodge Street, Iowa City, Iowa 52245. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on February 13, 2019. Are there any questions from the board?
Director Eystone had a very good question that concerning the gymnasium as the alternate. Dwayne, can you just inform the public as to that discussion?
Sure. When we originally bid this project, the goal was to add a gymnasium if possible. It came in way over budget, so we went back and redesigned the project and figured the best way to approach it moving forward was to have the gymnasium as add alternate. The good news is that we're going to have a discussion later this evening, and if the amended budget is passed, then there should be enough adequate funds to do the gymnasium in addition to the classrooms. But we didn't know that at the time of design, so that's why we did it that way.
Are there any questions from the public?
Thank you. That closes our public hearing portion of the agenda. Next up, we have a policy review. Ruthina, do you want to give us an update from the P&G committee's work?
Yeah, I'll start and I'll let Superintendent Murley jump in here. But in the packet, you'll see that we have the policy transition process that shows where our current model and pieces of that, where everything lives, and in hopefully the new governance model that we'll be presenting to the board for feedback and voting, where things will live. As a committee, we reviewed series 100, 200, and 900 and discussed some edits that we would like to see as a committee. That track changes hasn't been posted, but Kim is working on making that available so people can see and follow along what we're discussing as a committee and hopefully provide feedback so we're not presenting something where then we have to take it back and make additional changes. So one of the important pieces is what you have in front of you today, it's what's in there as of today, by pulling everything that we currently have in our current model structure and placing it into the proposed new policy governance. So it's important to give us feedback, as our next meeting is scheduled for March 5th. And we'll be reviewing the changes that we had discussed at the previous meeting and hopefully making additional ones if we get feedback. Steve, did you have?
Yeah, sure. So as Ruthina said, so we went through 1s, 2s, and 9s. It was a big bite. It was a lot of stuff to go through. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 left to do, so we're trying to stay on track with that. And as we talked about, some of the other policy sections are a little bit lengthier, so we're working through that as quickly as we can. The document that's titled Policy Transition Process, as Ruthina said, for us that's a key document because that shows current location to maps to future location. We have lots of current locations with things that hopefully will be easier to find under the new location. I know one of the questions that was asked, and just a reminder, our baseline model for the new policy governance structure is the IASB policy manual. We've been going through that, and you'll frequently see things with the letter G as you're reviewing it, and those are very Iowa City specific guidelines that differ from what might be considered the standard template for items that come from the IASB. Those would be things that would be the straight numbers, the regulations and the exhibits that come with that. So as we move forward, for your reference, we will continue to push the documents to the full board for review in advance of each of the policy and governance meetings, and you're more than welcome to share your feedback with them or with me, and we can carry that into the meeting for conversation. We'll do it in a markup form so that we can all track it, and then hopefully when we are all done with it, we will be able to bring you back the full 100s through 900s for a final review.
Can I put a pitch in for one around the Educational Philosophy 101? And I'm assuming this is the standard ISB version?
Yes.
I would love for us to take a look at how we can craft this to be Iowa City School District specific. I mean, there's some things that we hold dear, I think, in our district. We heard Brady talk about the relationship we have between the board, teachers union, and the district administrative team. I mean, that kind of collaborative relationship, I think, models the kind of behaviors we want to grow in our students. We value equity highly. We've been working a lot on that as a school board and the equity committee in our entire district, and I'd love to see that reflected maybe a little more specifically. Just some ideas as I was reading that it's generic and it's good. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't think it reflects the nature of our school district. I'd love to spend some time on that.
Absolutely. And I know one of the things that we've done is when we found something like that where we find support for the ISB standard, we've looked at some of those and said we need more depth, which is specific to the district, and then we've written a guideline that'll sit behind that, that'll really carry the local flavor, if you will, into the standard state policy.
Okay, great, that's helpful. And then I still owe, on the conflict of interest piece, there is a policy on conflict of interest for board members, but we don't yet have a process for disclosing, right? And so there's a form for us being able, and so I'm still working on getting kind of a template set of questions for that. I think that's important too. But I was just going to say, thank you for the work on this. It's amazing and hard, and I appreciate the time that the committee's putting into the work.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. And I wasn't, you know, when I saw this work, I wasn't sad that I wasn't on P&G this year. But and I just had a question on the conflict of interest. So are these policies, are these just specific to the board, and there are other policies for staff?
Yes, so
Okay.
the way that IASB has them coded, so you'll see the 3s and 4s are going to be for employees, and they're separate for classified and certified employees, and so you'll see a lot of similarities. You'll see mirror policies that pertain to certified and support staff and the board in a situation like this. So that policy will then reside in multiple places specific to those employment categories.
Great, thanks.
Well, and I think it's, there's a lot of things in here that I don't know that would take the scrutiny of the U.S. or the state constitution. And it's ironic on the night that Mary Beth and John Tinker are speaking at Old Capitol that some of the language in some of these things I think need to get an independent legal look over. Because of I think there are real problems with the constitutionality of it. Also, I agree the conflict of interest needs to be heavily scrutinized, and there has to be disclosure by board members and by admin staff that contracts or gets revenues from vendors that we do business with, and board members who sell products that the district buys. That needs to be looked at. Also, I didn't really see anything covering fraternization, which has kind of been lingering for a long time too, and we need a policy there similar to other entities in our community that have policies to take care of that. But I think we've got a long ways to go with this, and I understand JP's comment, you know, that it is a lot that's on P&G, and I think personally that this is something that the full board should be spending time delving into, since we've taken operations and brought that into a group of the entire. I think it's important, especially with the huge changeover we're doing right now, that all board members be involved in that discussion, not just at final approval or questioning at the board table.
Couple of things. I don't think it's only involving you at the final spot. This is the first time we've discussed it as a board. But I think everyone was given all of the policies, right? I mean, you can read through them all as we go through it and offer your suggestions or changes, send them to the group or to Rathena, so we can discuss them at the table when we do it in policy and governance. I don't think we're hiding anything from anybody on the board. I think the board is fully participating in this.
We can go to the committee meetings and share thoughts and ideas as well, I'm assuming. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that the intent is to provide a robust opportunity for all of us to review these policies and provide our feedback along the way. I think the discussion tonight was to alert us on this is the process, that we'll be bringing things forward as they're being developed, so we have proper time for our input, and because it's a lot to read, and you're right, Phil, we need to be thorough about the review and making sure they are accurate, reflective, and comprehensive. So, Sean.
Just 2 points. One is we went through it in P&G. We went through it pretty much line by line. I mean, we kind of glossed over some stuff that because we had all read it ahead of time, wanted to make sure that we hit the ones that we already had questions for. And there, I don't know, there's a half dozen pretty significant changes that I think we brought up that we'd like to either add to or completely change over. So I'd like to see, as we move through, seeing that striking stuff through. I think that'll be helpful. To the legality point, the IASB, where we're starting from, do they have their own like legal team that's reviewing the policy? I know they're making sure that everything's got the right code and everything else, right, as the code gets changed. Are they doing that, and then are we also doing it on our end?
We aren't doing it on our end yet, but yes, they do have legal counsel that I believe is part of the team that writes the policies.
And a Google search of the IASB going back 7 or 8 years ago will show their own legal troubles. So I think it's wise to.
Well, I think we know the one that you're talking about because we received that email as well today. You know, if you have concerns and you want something changed, let us know so that we can discuss it in the committee.
And I think it's important to note that as a board as a whole, we can come to an agreement that if we want, once we're done moving things over, if we want Joe to take a look.
Oh, certainly.
We can do that to ensure that as a board, we're putting forth policies that don't violate any state or constitutional rights. And I think that's important to make sure that we're not doing that.
Well, I said when I prefaced my legal was independent, I don't think we ask a coyote to give an autopsy on the fox's work.
Are you going to jump in, JP?
You know, I'll just kind of read this, what we're talking about, so everybody knows and it's on the same page of the public, that objection is to the, that this statement violates the First Amendment, I think is what the email referred to, that the board members will make no disparaging remarks in or out of the board meeting about other members of the board or their opinions. And that's in the Code of Ethics, page 102 there. And so, I mean, I guess I think it's worth maybe just briefly touching on, you know, what that's getting at is civility. And so what's the way that we could want to encourage civility, you know, without violating someone's First Amendment rights? And I also think that sometimes, you know, as an elected official, you take an oath and there's a responsibility to conduct your discourse in a civil way, that maybe someone who's not elected isn't held to that standard. And I don't know that we're giving up our rights, but I think that we're agreeing to engage in a discourse in a certain way. And that's kind of my read of what we're trying to get out of this. And so, you know, how can we, you know, maybe there's a different way to say that, you know.
And seriously, I mean, that's, I think, why we're presenting it here, so we can have this discussion, so people can share those thoughts and concerns, so we can take that back and make it so that we're putting forth policy changes that we can all agree on.
Right.
And as I was looking at that one too, and thanks for getting specific about it. Oh, sorry. I was just saying that our board norms cover some of that civility stuff as well, and so that's another place where we can codify sort of our expectations as we want to conduct ourselves as board members. So I think that's probably a good follow-up conversation to have. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I understand where we're at in the process. Is this just a move over of the same language that the board has had and that we've reviewed from year to year on a regular cycle?
Much of it is.
A different format?
Much of it is, yeah.
Okay. Would it be possible to do the redlining, or maybe if
we
you still
tried that.
Okay.
It's almost unreadable when you do that, when you move. Some of them come straight verbatim, so there's no change at all. Others, Kim and I found it very hard to read it because there was significant strike-through between what we may have had and what IASB has now. Some of it's due to changes in law and state statutes, and so some of them were really hard to read.
Could you?
Possible to just maybe make a list of kind of, you know, the ones that were changed?
I think there's a way to kind of go side by side, right?
Right,
Just kind of going
exactly.
down and
Have
Put a narrative with it?
Well, no, if the numbers aren't changing, and you have the old version and you have the new version, and you have them next, like Sean's saying, have them next to each other, then you can go right, look at the two right there.
I guess I'm wondering more like about additions, things that you're, that haven't been reviewed really by the board yet. I'm wondering kind of like what we need to focus in on.
Sure.
We have a regular review cycle for the policies that we had.
Yeah, let me think about how to set that up so that you can actually like follow you can track those changes.
And one thing might be to make both, if it's not directly visually side by side, just to make them both available and just draw our attention to the areas where those, asterisks say, hey, these were some big changes, and then we can go look at it without making somebody go through and do all that Google editing. That, if it's going to be unreadable, then that's not worthwhile. But if we just draw our attention so we can go to those sections and kind of fine tooth it a little more.
I think that little policy transition process doc that's there will help with that, because it's not just it's here and now it's here, because it was here, 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 and here, and now it's here. So that guide will kind of help you at least follow it along.
Yeah. That's
and we did, and maybe this isn't clear on here, and I apologize for that piece, but for instance, in our old legally mandated board policies, if it's 102 in the old legally mandated policies, it's 102 in the new one. So you can see them side by side that way. So let me see if there's a way for us to figure out how to put those together in a way that you can see them, because I think we want to be able to distribute that to you electronically. So let me see what we can do about formatting something for you.
Don't spend a lot of time on it. I'm just wondering where the changes that you are making that the board has not previously seen. What those are.
Anything else? Thanks, Ruthina, Steve. Good conversation. Moving on. We have a discussion item. I think, Matt, you're going to cover the visit with Jeanette Epps.
Yeah, so we had Dr. Epps here last Friday. She visited all 3 of our high schools, and as well as Iowa City Regina. We coordinated with them, so they were part of the effort as well, and they were generous and made a nice contribution to some of her expenses. But she attended all 4. Every high school had a little different format for her. I know Liberty, for example, had a student panel in kind of a smaller setting, and then had her talk to a larger audience of students. City High reports there that that went well. They had about 300 students in their auditorium to hear her message, and so I think she was a busy lady and pretty tired by the end of the day. There was a community event with the showing of the Hidden Figures film that evening as well. So on all accounts, it was a nice celebratory event for Black History Month, and a positive role model for our students to see and engage with. I thought just kind of a funny thing is, you're working for NASA, we were going to pay for her flight, but she wanted to drive, so that was kind of humorous to me. So we paid her mileage instead of her flight costs, but must be nothing like getting 4 tires on the ground after being in, I don't know, flight all day. So yeah, exactly, stay on Earth when I can. But overall, no, I think it was a real positive experience for our students, and we enjoyed having her here.
Any questions from anyone on that?
Well, I attended the public event at Old Brick and met Dr. Epps, and she's well-grounded, definitely that way. Very impressive resume. Was very taken by our community and the questions and the enthusiasm of our students, and is very interested in a long-term commitment and activity and exchange with Iowa City. So I want to thank Henry Harper and Matt for their efforts to make it happen, and I think it was a great event, and I think that there'll be more visits in the future.
Great, thank you, Matt. Appreciate the update. Craig, moving on to the FY 2020 budget discussion.
Budget preparation is actually going very well this year. As you know, the governor, the legislators actually approved and the governor signed our allowable growth for fiscal year 20. And that will help me not have to make multiple scenarios for you this year, as I have in the past several years when we were guessing at what that was going to be. The legislators did not deal with 21 as per the law, but the governor did make a recommendation that they chose not to deal with it this time. But we do know that we're locked into 2.06% for 20, which, just for your information, excuse me, is the third largest percentage growth that we've received in the last 10 years. Now, that's a fairly sad commentary on funding education, but nonetheless, it's an interesting number. We had 1 year at 4%, 1 year at 2.25, and then this is the third largest out of the last 10 years. So when you talk with the stakeholders in the community about funding for education, that could be a good number to remember. I did provide you with just a simple input sheet. And I thought it would be interesting for you to see some of the numbers and some of the assumptions that go in there since we last talked. As you remember, we had a nice bump in our assessed valuation of 4% this year. And so if you open that inputs document, you'll see at the very top a small adjustment for certified enrollment. There were 3 classes actually for ELL students that were identified that were not actually in ELL programs at the time, and so we removed them. And then there were a couple of full-time students that we needed to take off the rolls. So overall, we needed to adjust our certified enrollment by 2.66, which will be about a $17,000 reduction in our fiscal year 20 budget. We locked in the 2.06% for all of the categories. Excuse me, the teacher leadership, the professional development, the early intervention, and the teacher salary supplement. You can see the excuse me, the allowable growth for a modified supplemental for dropout prevention at $4.4 million. Our instructional support program that we're actually going to consider tonight, we're using 10% of that and 5% for the income surtax rate. We have, excuse me, a need for about $12.3 million in cash reserve. And if you think about what you've approved, even to date, with a $7 million special ed deficit, a $1.4 million ELL deficit, and nearly a $500,000 asbestos hazardous materials removal request for a modified allowable growth. You're looking between $9 and $10 million just right off the bat before you even get to any type of cash reserve for cash flow purposes. And so it's a big number, but it's a number that's easily justified by our needs, our program needs. And so just wanted to point out why those numbers are there. We do have the 1.34 voted PEPL levy in place, and you put that in line 19.2. And then we're asking for $8 million in the management fund this year. Last year the ask was more along the line of $4 million, but we had a need to bump that up due to early retirement for this year, and in order to make the fund able to handle that, those payments, we needed to bump that up this year. It'll go back down next year, more than likely. And in doing that, we also, when we sold our last bonds, we structured the bonds so that we'd have a little bit of flexibility in that first payment. So you'll notice that down below, we're only asking for just a little under $10 million for debt service. And if you go to the second page, you'll see how all that translates into tax rates. So at the bottom of the second page, after you go past all the key numbers in the general fund, and you hit line 15.21, where we're looking at about a 10.47 cent levy for our general fund, you can see that down below the management fund is, we're looking at about $1.27. And then applying the 33-cent board-approved physical plant and equipment levy to the $1.34 voted, you can see that that's $1.67. And then the debt service itself is $1.45. And if you remember, we told the voters that it wouldn't go above $1.95, and we're well under that for this year. But next year, that will go back up. Just as a reminder to you, we traded a little bit off for our management fund this year, but that'll go back up next year as we're selling the final amount, the third piece of the $191 million bond that we're able to sell for our facility master plan. So those are really the key numbers that form the tax rate behind the certified budget. And so just wanted to remind you of the calendar that we're on. Tonight is just an update to you and any input that you have. Then we're looking at March 26th as the formal presentation that the superintendent will provide for our fiscal year 20 budget. Then we'll publish that soon after, and then hold the public hearing at your board meeting on April 9th and certify on April 15th. And so I'll just open it up for any questions you might have.
Not hearing any questions, Craig. I think that was very thorough and comprehensive. Thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Moving to our presentation portion of the evening, post-secondary readiness report. Is that Diane? Yeah?
Yep, that's me. These are just a couple reports that were requested by the board. So I think Director Malone had asked a couple months ago maybe to get some information about our post-secondary readiness. So the state of Iowa presents a report every winter, and then I just take that report and amend it to include data from Iowa City School District as well. So that was part of your packet. So you'll see in there on page 1 a little explanation of the data, and then you'll see the Iowa data that shows post-secondary enrollment within 1 year of high school graduation. And then on the next page, you'll see some information that's specific to the Iowa City Community School District. So you'll see, kind of that red line there, which is our average post-secondary enrollment at about 74% of our students go on to some kind of post-secondary schooling. And then, kind of in line with most of our other data that we see, we certainly see gaps in our data where our Black, our Hispanic, and our students on free and reduced lunch aren't achieving at the levels of our other students. Even though we're above the state average in all of those, still not at the level of what we would expect. And you'll see that kind of throughout the report. So as you look at that bottom chart on page 2 as well, I've got 3 columns that kind of show a trend of Iowa City data, and you'll see that those numbers are dropping as far as the percent of kids who are attending post-secondary, but they're also dropping across the state as well, so not quite sure, know what to attribute that to, but just a few less students that are able or making that decision to go on to some kind of post-secondary school. And then on page 3, you'll see the remedial coursework information. So some students who go on to post-secondary have to take a math or an English course that is considered remedial, for which they're not getting actual college credit, but it's more of a high school remediation course. You'll see percentages there again that show the percentage of our students who are needing to take those remedial courses. And again, you'll see those gaps in our Black, Hispanic, IEP, FRL, and ELL students that have to take remedial courses at a higher rate than other students do from our district. And then on that last page, you'll kind of see, as we follow students 5 years, 6 years out of school, what percent are actually going on to college and then getting some kind of award. So the state percentage is about 46.6, and you'll see our class of 2010, we were at 53%, and our class of 2011 at 54%. So just kind of a general picture of what our students do post-high school. And open it up for questions.
I don't know if this is a question or if it's a comment or observation. I mean, I've heard that from a remedial course standpoint in post-secondary education, both community college and 4-year, there's been a trend over the last few years to not offer as many remedial courses and sort of embed into credit-bearing courses, the kind of remediations or additional supports that students need. I mean, the remedial courses are tough, right? You pay tuition and not get credit. So I think I've been reading that's been a trend in Iowa post-secondary universities. And so I'm just wondering if the data on page 3 could be a little bit confounded with that. I mean, it looks like fewer of our students are going into remedial courses, but if post-secondary institutions are offering fewer, then they're not going to be showing up that way. So it's just something to think about as we're looking at that particular metric. Clearly, we want our students prepared and not having to have any remedial instruction in English or reading. In math, we just need to, I think, be a little careful with that one particular metric.
Sure. Good point.
On the data on page 4, when it has completion or award, do they do anything as far as breaking it down as far as apprenticeship, 2-year, 4-year, that type of thing? Or is it just when in your graphs they have no longer enrolled, no award, enrolled, and awarded? On the awarded status, do we get anything breaking it down any further than that?
To know if it's a 2-year award or a 4-year, or like you say, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
This is the only data that I've been able to access.
You mentioned certificate.
Right. Well, right, and I'm assuming that might encompass apprenticeship program completion and things like that, but that would be interesting to know too, how many are actually completing 4-year, 2-year, and apprenticeship programs. But thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Diane? Thank you so much. Appreciate you putting that together and presenting that tonight. Next up is the district assessment overview, and that's
Me
also
again,
you.
right. Try to put these on the same night, so I only have to show up every so often. Director Ressler is the one who asked for this information and just thought it would be nice to have an overview of all the assessments that are given in the district. And, as I was putting those together, it does seem like a long list, doesn't it? I tried to asterisk the ones that are pretty much state or federally required, so we don't have a choice on a lot of the assessments, and I tried to move those towards the front. So the first one is the one that the statewide assessment of student progress, which is going to be the new Iowa assessment that we are getting ready for, which will be administered in the spring instead of the fall that we've been used to. And then it just goes through and lists the variety of other assessments or surveys that our students undertake, and then the use of the data. And I tried to also include kind of a website in case you wanted to find out a little more information about it.
So a couple comments, if I can jump in.
Certainly.
On FAST.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to sound like a snarky comment, I think, but it's just a wording thing, but I think there's something more to it. So we talk about results are used to identify students who are persistently at risk so that they
Yes.
can receive appropriate interventions. And so apparently our interventions are not working because these students are persistently at risk. And so I know that sounds snarky, but this is one of the biggest issues we all face, and I feel this from my own profession. We measure student performance on academic benchmarks, and the growth year over year is just not there, especially in certain population groups. And so how to find the right interventions that are going to actually make a difference at the student level, especially for students who we're categorizing as at risk. I'm just saying, persistently at risk really hurts my heart, and how can we continue to find ways to find interventions that are appropriate for individual students? Personalized learning, adaptive learning, teaching strategies. I know that we're working on it, I do know, and this is one of the very hardest things to accomplish, and so I'm not being critiquing unfairly. It's just I'm recognizing and acknowledging this is a really hard problem.
And that terminology, just so you know, is not my snarky terminology, but it's from the state that identifies students that way. And their thinking is if a student shows us on one assessment that they're not proficient, that may just have been a bad testing day, and we don't know for sure if that student is at risk. But if they're showing us on multiple assessments, then they're considered to be persistently at risk, and at that point, we're required to provide an intervention, which is why that terminology is there, but your point's well taken.
It's a real tough problem. And then the other one's just a little question on the Cooter thing.
Sure.
And I mean, that's interesting, the career assessment or career navigation. I'm trying to find it. It's in here somewhere.
Yep, second page, about in the middle.
But it's TBD in terms of what grades and when we would administer it. So is that just, have we not decided when we're going to do that
Sure.
yet?
So the Cooter Navigator is I put it asterisk, we are required to give a career assessment to students. So at this point, we selected the Cooter Navigator to give that. And we're still just early on in the process of developing that and really kind of structuring the best way to use that information and who all the assessments are given to. So it's still, I guess, a work in progress.
Yeah.
Maybe just a note on that. So the state used to pay for a tool that they selected, and then they decided not to pay for it anymore, but we still needed to have a tool, and their initial response was, pick whatever tool you want to, and then they decided that that was not a good idea. And so they delimited the field for us and said, you may pick these tools. They're still not paying for it, but they delimited the choices for us. So our team had to go through and then select from that pre-approved list of tools and then go through the implementation process for it.
So, I mean, I value that exercise, career planning for students. What grade levels are we targeting this for?
Typically, that's junior, secondary.
Okay, thanks.
Junior high to high school.
But there's, I anecdotally was listening to some discussion on a Sunday radio program about the need to start the discussions and information with students much younger than secondary, on especially getting students interested in trades and other career paths. And the conclusion of that group, the discussion is that if you're waiting till high school to have that discussion, it's too late. But that's just a thought to put out.
I just wanted to thank you for putting this together so that we could have that overview of everything that was given out in the district.
Yeah, this is a really helpful document. Yeah, it's hard, you know, because you hear about the testing, and I know some people feel, you know, we test so much, and clearly we do, but you kind of look through and try to, you know, trim the fat on this, and it's. I mean, these are all important metrics. And I don't, you know, we're not going to get there by testing, you know, constantly. And I too, you know, and going, you know, back to the post-secondary, I mean, obviously we sing the same song over and over, that these population groups. Maybe on that one, not to go back, but, you know, noticing oftentimes we're kind of ahead of the state, but there's some metrics in there where we're not, you know, and I think those, you know, might need some extra focus from us. Like normally, in most metrics, you know, we're beating the state on these numbers, but the areas where we're not are pretty significant deficits that we could maybe focus more of our efforts on. And I know we are as well.
Any other comments or questions for Diane? Thank you. Very, very helpful. It's a great reference point, seeing it all in one document. Next up, action items. First up, instructional support levy.
All right. This is in our journey to reapprove the instructional support levy. Tonight is the board needs to approve the resolution that was included in your board agenda, which is your intent to participate. And it basically sets the hearing date for March 26th. We'll come back at that time. We'll hold the hearing, and then you'll approve the intent to participate after that hearing. So this is just a step-by-step process. I included the calendar with this, and so if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I move to approve the instructional support levy.
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? Hearing none, Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up, the Facilities Master Plan, Overall Plan, Grant Elementary School, North Central Junior High, and Tate High School.
We're going to start with the overview. I'm going to bring that document up, the chart.
Yeah, we can do that.
So Craig's going to walk us through where we are and where we're going. He's got a good summary chart here that shows where the projects are at in your board approval process to get us to the point we're at today. And we want to make sure that you understand where we're at and where we're going.
Yep, there you go. So I thought it would be a really good idea to take you clear back to the night it was approved in December of 2013. Just for community transparency, for you as a board to know that we've been, the fidelity in this process is carried through all the iterations that we've gone through as we've modified this report or this plan over time. And so the peach color at the top, you can see are the 1 penny funded projects, and then the violet colors are the PEPAL funded projects that we had under the facility master plan. And at the time, the board asked us to leverage those resources to their maximum extent so that when we went out to the public, we would have a very good foundation and platform on which to say this is our need. And we did that. So the very first column of numbers is what was originally approved in 2013. We came back with revisions in April of 15, and then if you remember in the fall of 17, we actually accelerated the plan after we were able to get a positive vote on the bonds, and so that we were able to approve at that point in time an update to the plan that included the accelerated projects. And now we're coming back to you this evening with some revised budgets as we've gone through the remaining projects, and we've seen where we've been over, we've seen where we're under, and we wanted to make it clear to you which projects you know we're taking a little from, and from a budgetary point of view, not changing anything in the project or the scope of the project, but we just have some projects that came in well under budget, and then some projects that came in well over budget. And so all the lower half of this sheet deals with the bond projects that we're currently engaged in right now. And over in the very last column, you can see the bold highlighted numbers at the bottom that we're suggesting that we change from the previous column. And you can see, for instance, Grant Elementary. When we looked at that project, we feel like we can take $500,000 from there and move it to another project that has a higher need because we have Grant under contract and it's well on its way. There's contingency already built in to that project, etc. And then as you go through that list, you can see the projects and the adjustment amount. We told you at the time that we approved the Lincoln contract that we were spending a little bit more, and that is at $2.7 million. North Central and Southeast were able to reduce those budgets a little bit and still maintain exactly what we told the voters we were going to put at those locations. The West project, when we built that, bid that here recently, it did come in over budget, and so we felt like in order to accomplish what we needed in that location, we needed to increase that by a little bit. And then probably the big pieces here you can see are Liberty, Phase 3, and Tate. And for Tate in particular, we did put that out to bid, and it came in well over the budgeted amount, and so we needed to regroup on that. We still feel it's extremely valuable to put Tate on par with the rest of our facilities, to have an athletic venue there, a gymnasium for those students in which to engage in those types of activities. We did put it in as an ad alternate, but with this budget adjustment, we feel it's adequate funding now in this budget to build the classrooms that are necessary and also do that project. And we'll go through that bidding process, and hopefully that'll come in right. And then the Liberty High School, Phase 3, need to put a little bit more money into this project to connect the two wings that stick out and make the courtyard, to finish out that building, and then the subsequent parking lots that need to go with it to build out that site. And so we found that as we were working through that project, that we were looking at that budget being a little short. So we wanted to make that adjustment as well. Where are we finding this money? Well, at the bottom of the page, you can see that we took the exact amount, the $188.2 million from our accelerated plan, and we added to that the bond premiums that we already have in bank from having sold our debt at a premium based on our good bond rating. And so we were able to take those funds and allocate it across these projects to make them more comfortable, to fit within the scope of what needs to be done there. And we're just bringing it all to you as a package tonight for you to act on and to help us move this forward with these projects. So I'll open it up to questions. That's basically the general summary.
Questions?
So you said with Tate, it looks like they'll get the gym and the classrooms and the training room or some other things. Okay.
That's in the design.
Okay.
We have to bid it yet, but
Right.
So Craig, what happens when we go to bid Tate and it comes in even higher? Will that then be a discussion of what we take out, or will you be coming back asking for more to fund that since we're tapped out? What happens?
Right. As in any of our projects, we always fit the scope to fit within the budget unless the board wants us to do something different. And if it's within what the voters approve for us, we certainly have the latitude to do that. So if Tate were to come in a few dollars above and we felt like we wanted to do that, we would come to you with a recommendation on how to handle that, and then you could make that decision.
And also share that when we get to one of the subsequent items in this area on Tate, one of the things that we've done is come up with a what we think is a creative opportunity that will allow us to aggressively bid this, and we hope get us a better package in the end. So we'll share that with you in just a moment.
Right.
And just for clarification, I was using Tate as an example. So
That's a good
that
example.
was an
That's
example
all right.
for
Any
any of our
project.
project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, we had that discussion in admin today, and our principals pointed that out, very point, so, yeah.
So the other relevant thing that we did was we value engineered the project. Originally, the size of the gym, the scope of the gym, it was being designed and built as a storm shelter. So we felt there was a more economical way to do it. So we're actually building the storm shelter in the classroom wing and not the gymnasium.
Right.
It cut back significantly on our structural cost, but we were still able to work the gym into the budget. It's just that it won't be the storm shelter, the classrooms will be. And it's just, that we felt like we made some very prudent moves with the structure to make it more affordable.
Right.
Other questions on the summary? I think there's some more specific information you wanted to go over on a couple of the building projects.
Where do you want to go next? Tate or?
Do you want to walk through the, and this may be, we certainly don't want to belabor.
North Central.
Do you want to walk through that second one on the projects that are in progress? Do you want an update on that? That was part of our plan for tonight, which is the second document.
Sure.
Okay.
We put in narrative form the projects that are currently under construction or renovation. I know that our project managers, they do a terrific job of going out and monitoring these each week. They snap us pictures, and we share on Google the status project of each one of these particular projects. But we currently have a list that's fairly long, but Mann Elementary in Lincoln, moving right along. The new Grant Elementary we'll talk more about this evening. Liberty High, the Phase 2, the athletic complex, and so forth. And as a part of that, I just wanted to remind the board that there's going to be a new bus staging area up there. Because of our growth to the north, we felt it prudent to be able to house some busing up there. And that particular facility will be equipped with solar panels for an energy project that we promised a couple of years ago in our community that we would engage in. And that's exactly what this project will do. And Larson Construction has the contract on that. And they'll be moving that forward as soon as the spring allows them to break ground, and it's supposed to be ready for school to start in August. It's not a huge facility. It's a rather modest building, but at the same time, we will actually have solar panels that will put energy back on the grid as kind of a test for us there. And if that's successful, we can, of course, expand that footprint to other projects and other facilities within the Iowa City Community School District. But that was just a great place to start this project. And then Southeast being underway, North Central and Alexander for the 4-classroom addition that's there. So that's what's going on right now. We have a bid and are in the process of bidding for this spring. The West High Phase 2, that's mostly air conditioning pieces, window, the fenestration and the facade. All of that is improved at West, and so that did come in initially over bid, and we've been relooking at that. The budget adjustment will help in that regard to fulfill that need. City High, of course, you've seen the proposals on that. We just got the construction documents today, and I noted with Dwayne that the project book was only 614 pages long, and I was a little disappointed it wasn't a little bit longer, but at the same time, that's a tremendous amount of work that's gone into the design of that building, and there are some pretty great plans for that. Kirkwood, we're working with the principal there in that final design phase. Joe DeVoke at Wood in that building, and then the Liberty High Phase 3. You can see what's proposed as far as the 500 student addition and the parking, and then of course at Tate. So those are the ones that we're undergoing this spring. And add to that, then there are projects that are going to begin next year at this time, and Dwayne's in the process of going through the architect RFP process, and we got tremendous response on that, and we're working through all of these remaining projects, and he'll be meeting individually with the building principals to select the proper fit, the architect for that project, and then bring that back to the board here pretty soon in order to get those up and running and the final projects under the bond. So just wanted to give you a narrative of where we are at with these projects as an update for you at this time of year.
Just a quick question, maybe for Dwayne. The ones that start in the spring, is that like as soon as school is out starts, or are you starting earlier on some of those projects?
Well, most of the bids are coming in April that we've got planned right now. So it would be late May, mid to late May before we could start. But if we can start like an addition at Kirkwood, it might be possible, but highly unlikely because we got to move modulars. We might get started at City High doing some demo work, but most of the work won't start till school's out.
And will the work at City High displace the tennis team at all, or will that happen after tennis season?
The tennis courts will be gone this summer.
So
they'll be the first thing to go.
Right, but they'll be able to play this season there before they're displaced?
Yes, this spring they'll be able to play there. Okay. And I think Terry Coleman's been working on some alternative locations, maybe with the university in the city of Iowa City for the next couple seasons.
Last meeting, we talked about North Central and that the 10 classroom edition was a misprint. We're just using this same document. We're still going with the discussion last week that there's 7 new classrooms, 6 new classrooms, 1 being divided. Just for clarification on this one here, can you just run through that one more time, Craig?
We attached a memo for you in this packet. Maybe you want to pull it up. But what I did was took you through the history of the design process. And it's a lengthy memo, but it was something that Colby Miller, the school principal, who's here, by the way, and I put together. And with the original design, if you'd scroll down just a little bit, back in 2010, New and Monson, who did the original school design, proposed to us, or did to the district, that 6 classrooms on each floor could be added to that building. But if you notice, the configuration of that is rectangular. When the design team, keep scrolling, when the design team and that's some information back when we did the original BLDD facility master plan, that actually suggested 8 classrooms and not the 10. The next document shows a capacity addition of 240 students on that document, which again was part of the facility master plan that was approved by the board back then. Then the next shows the initial design concept that the design team, which was staff members and engineers and architects, went through, and myself, and it was decided that this building needed to conform to the geometry, for lack of a better word, of this building and keep that curve. It reduced the size. And the other 2 issues that crept into the design solution, on the left, the parking lot, we really didn't want to move that. And on the right, you'll notice that there's a very steep incline on that grade. And that kind of limited what we could do over there, because we wanted to maintain the ability to put an emergency fire lane around there, which we're going to do. So it just really limited how much we could add on to the building. So if you go to the next, and then also at the top is the new gymnasium, fitness room, and then to the right, upper right corner, that's the addition to the cafeteria, and the second floor addition to the library. So as we work through the solution, this was an initial design, schematic design, and we did draw those 3 classrooms. If you scroll down just a little bit more, we noticed that some of those classrooms, we compared them to the classrooms at Liberty High School. And by the way, I apologize for my voice, but there's nothing I can do about it. So, we compared them to the 3 typical classrooms at Liberty High School, and they're a little on the small side, and the design team opted for fewer classrooms that were a little bit larger. But then also in the discussion, if you'll scroll down, Kristen, the school really felt like this building is used by all the elementary schools in the north part of our district for music programs. And they really felt like if they added a music room, which is a bigger room but less rooms, that the school would benefit, that the elementary schools would benefit, and that also then would free up use of the other music rooms for general education if need be. So that was one decision that was made. The other one was to add science rooms. Again, it was deemed to be more cost effective to build a new science room than to go back and try and retrofit the old ones. But again, the old science rooms can be used for general education. They don't all have to be science rooms every period of the day. And so it's like the discussion we had many months ago about adding art and music and freeing up classroom space. It's the same concept. So by adding music and science, it frees up other rooms in the building. The other thing that was discussed back then was, on the lower left part of that diagram there, you'll see that there was currently a small room and a large room that's not very effective class-wise. So we came up with the potential of removing the wall and making 2 general ed classrooms. That has not been done. It's not in the plan, but it can still be done if we need to. So then the next page, and I know I'm running through this, but hopefully that'll answer most of your questions. That's the first floor plan where we added the music room and a couple larger, back up a little, just a couple larger classrooms on the east end, and then the music room on the left end. And then just below that then would be the second floor where we added 2 science rooms on the west end and 2 classrooms on the east end. And then those 2 classrooms that could be subdivided or reconfigured. So through this process too, and you can just right there to hold it. You see the purple or lavender, that's the new addition to the media center. And one thing that we've discovered is that other classroom that's the tan colored one just to the left of that purple is an old computer lab that's going to be repurposed into a classroom. And there's a second computer lab just at it's on this same floor, it's not colored, but if you look at the main entrance right above on the second floor, the first room to the right of that corridor, can you move your cursor? Down a little, right there. That's also a computer lab that can be reconfigured into a general education room. Plus, I've been told by Mr. Miller and the staff there that they intend to use that lavender area in the classroom, in the media center as an additional class area where class groups can get together. So physically, we didn't add 10 classrooms. Physically, we added 7 classrooms, but we repurposed two labs for 9, and we can repurpose the science rooms and the music rooms that are not being used 100% of the time. So is it exactly what was said in that? No. Did it meet the intent? I believe it did. And it added a very conservative number. It added capacity of 234 without adding the computer labs. If you want to put those in there, it was 250 plus. So I'm very comfortable, but I also think it's important that maybe you hear from Mr. Miller what his impressions are in the design. I think it's important to hear that. So Colby, if you don't mind coming up and answering it. Yeah, come on up. Yeah.
And thank you, Dwayne, for the commentary there. Just to kind of talk process, when we started down this road, I developed a building expansion committee team at North Central, and as you can kind of see through Dwayne's history, that's where we started. The representation on that team were faculty in all of the departments within our school, and we met monthly and just discussed what the current plans were. They gave me feedback. I took that feedback back to the architects, and then we kept working the problems, ironing out any kinks. And what we did decide, though, I think a major point is that they felt that the smaller classrooms in the original design were not going to be suitable or adequate for our students, particularly with a lot of the instructional strategies we use with blended learning and kids moving around. A smaller space is really difficult to utilize that strategy. So they felt very comfortable with going with a bigger space and potentially less classrooms. And then also looking at the option of repurposing what we currently have that's not very functional at this point. So in the end, I agree with Dwayne. We feel like that 10 classroom addition is fairly accurate. Is it 10 particular new classroom spaces on each end? It's not. But we are gaining quite a bit with the design that we came up with.
I appreciate you coming in. I mean, it's odd to me that we keep revisiting this one because we already approved it so long ago and it's already under construction. But because it was brought up again, I just wanted to shout out again, I guess compliment your team. You go through the process, you did the work, we took your recommendations, we approved it as a board because that's what you guys need and want in your building. So I mean, I have no issues with what's presented and what we approve.
And just like I said, I was, having a kid at North Central, right? We had a PSTO meeting shortly after I think they kind of landed on this most recent design, and Colby had some little blueprints or something and was excited to show us all. And I know that he kind of walked us through the process then and how excited the team was on where we landed. And I could tell then that he was pretty excited to get it started, and he's probably a little less excited now that it's happening loudly during the day, but I think that it looks great now where it's at.
In our, we had our right sizing of the schools, I forget exactly when that was, and we came up with the number. So the number of science rooms in North Central are the same or more, or they're less than what during our right sizing discussions?
Actually, there's more science rooms, but they can be used as general ed classrooms as well. So I don't know exactly, there'll be what, 5? Yeah. And yeah, it meets the template to answer your first question.
Maybe one quick thing to note about the science, and I know that we're so close to this, sometimes we forget these things, but one of the challenges that we've had with the science rooms in the past is that as the building tapers, And if you look at page 3 on there, you'll notice that the further away from the center of the building that you get, the smaller the classrooms are. I can remember talking to Doc about her concerns about that last classroom and that there was a significantly different learning environment than there was in the first classroom because of the nature of a science classroom and the physical structures that are inside there. So that was also part of that decision-making process to repurpose what was a science classroom into a gen ed classroom and then use the room on the end, which is larger, so that it is more in line with the science classrooms that are closer to the center of the building.
Yeah, and along those lines, one other thing we considered, we adopted an ID program at North Central this year that we're very proud of. But one thing that we have found is students with disabilities in our program currently, the current classroom that we have, that space is not big enough. And even looking at the scope of some of the classrooms that were recommended at the beginning, that space isn't large enough. So when we went down to the end of the building, that was another determining factor. We needed a bigger classroom for our ID program for our students, which, by the way, will also have a built-in restroom for those students as well for accessibility, which again adds more space.
That wasn't in the original plan. We added that since we started construction. So we added that restroom.
Any other comments or questions? I want to echo Paul's comments. Thanks for coming in, taking your team through the process, being flexible as you've learned throughout the process, and making the most of the process and getting what your students need. So thank you.
Well, we're grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we want to talk about grant next? Is that what?
We can certainly do that.
Or whatever you think is
Okay.
the proper
Tate
sequence?
Prefer to do Tate first,
All right.
or you want to do Grant
Okay.
first?
Grant
Tate?
last.
What?
Whatever you guys whatever you all are
Wait,
prepared
when you get
to do.
queued up there, you want to do Tate or Grant?
We'll get it.
Grant.
Go back to the Windows page. Okay, so we have some special guests this evening that will help us address this issue, and I'll introduce them to you. And I have a couple comments I'd like to make before they come up. And this morning we looked at the progress of this project, and I frankly was very pleased. There's a lot of activity out there. There's a lot of what I expected to see, several weeks ago, but there's preparations being made to do the concrete floors. The steel studs on the north end of the building have been started. The steel decking is down, and they've made some really good progress in the last week, and I'm just hopeful that the weather will hold and let us keep moving. So the other thing that I did today is I had my staff go back and look at where we were with Alexander and Hoover East at this time. And one of the benchmarks is our pay apps. And we have, every month they submit a pay app, and we process it, and the architect reviews it and says, yeah, they have indeed met or exceeded what's on the pay app. And we hate to overpay, but we want to pay fairly for what the work that's been done. And so that process, takes some time, but we do it. We go through all the budget categories, and the architect approves it, then I approve it and send it on for payment. So I said, okay, where were we in January 30th when we did Alexander? And where were we when we did Hoover East? Because those are the other two brand new elementary schools, and let's use those as a benchmark. And most of you weren't on the board when we did Alexander, but we got a really late start because we just approved the facility master plan, and it took some time to get it designed and up and rolling. We actually, in that project, you may remember, we had a couple different contracts because we had to go out and start moving dirt before we could build. And it's all sand, and the soil conditions there are worse than they are in North Liberty, believe me. To the point where we had sand drifting all the way down into the golf course to the south, and we had to mitigate all that. But anyway, having said that, I remember distinctly going out there in the wintertime and walking around in straw bales inside the building because they couldn't get the concrete down. So I asked the question. Good or bad, I want to hear what it is. So Alexander at this very same time is 50% paid for and at least 50% completed. Hoover East was 64% at this time. Paid for and completed. Maybe both projects probably exceeded because you're always a little ahead of where you're paying. We are today paid through the end of January for this project 50%. So we are where we were with Alexander. But with Alexander, we said we knew we were behind from day one. We knew we had to really hustle. We knew we really needed some decent weather to get it done. Okay? So I'm going to stand here today and tell you that it's still doable. It's going to take some work, but it's still doable. And I feel a whole lot better about it today than I did 2 weeks ago, or the last time I was at your board. I guess that was a month ago. So we've had many conversations with our builders and the architects. I'll have them come up. And our architect on the project is Andrew Wright. He's with FRK. And FRK, in my mind, is one of the premier school architect companies in the state of Iowa. I've done many projects with them, and they're really top-notch. And Andrew has proven to be pretty top-notch in his assessments of what's going on out there. To his right is Mike Jackson, and Mike Jackson is the president of Bi-State Construction. And he has an accelerated plan that he'd like to share with you tonight. And then also with Mike is Lance Atkinson, who's the project manager, and Doug Beard, who's also with the company, is here. And then also Ken Turnus is here, the principal of the school. He's sitting back there too. So we got all kinds of people here to answer questions. But I'd like Mike to tell you a little bit about his plan. This is a long PowerPoint. We're just going to show you the 3 basic floor plans, and he can talk from that. And then Andrew's going to give you his assessment of what's going on out there. Okay? So I'll come on up, Mike, and I'll just try and work the mouse here. There. So that's the basic floor plans. Before you get going, there's 3 parts of the building. There's units A, B, and C, and you're going to hear Mike talk about them like they're second nature, and they are. But Unit A, when you approach the building, is where the gymnasium, the lunchroom, those types of functions. To the right of that front entrance is the preschool, kindergarten wing. That's also a storm shelter. And then as you go northward in this project, Unit C is where the bulk of the classrooms are, and that's where we're having to get caught up. And then I call it the Grand Concourse that runs from south to north that you get back to that academic wing of the building. So let's just talk about the progress in A, B, and C, and how you're going to get caught up on C.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne. As he said, we've got units A, B, and C, and as we're progressing through here, how do I run the? Let's go on to Unit A progress. So we'll talk briefly about that. So that was one of the areas we were able to start early on, and we've got the cafeteria, the gym, kitchen area. We're progressing well on that, and that area is well within schedule and moving along rapidly. And those are just some visual aids to see some progress there, and notates again percents of completion, which was on that summary page of Unit A. So if we move on to Unit, back the other way.
You want to go to B?
Yeah, Unit B. This is a safe room area, which got a concrete ceiling over it, as well as administration area, some classrooms again. Progress on this, and that's one of the more complicated structures of the project as well. And again, it's moving along very well. Actually, the percentages speak for themselves, but we've actually got some paint started in those areas right now. So that's coming along quite nicely, and will continue to flow very well. And again, some more visual aids in Unit B also. So in Unit C, that's been the challenging part of the project, and basically the foundations are in and the structure's up. We're finishing some masonry bearing walls in that area, and we've got some exterior walls, steel stud exterior walls up on that, and more going up as we speak right now. So that whole area C enclosure is enclosing well, like Dwayne mentioned. We've got many other things going on there also. We've got roofing that's going to start very shortly, concrete that's going to be poured, interior framing as such. those are the high points of that area as well.
I think one thing I want to add, because it'll help maybe understand the project, is a lot of school buildings we do are all concrete block. You know, all the exterior walls, interior walls, all that, and then we put the steel joist and the steel deck on top. The difference with this is that it's a steel frame. It's the exterior walls are not concrete block. They're wide open. Some of them today, if you go out there, but if you go out there, what color is that sheeting? Yellow. That's yellow sheeting, the insulated sheeting that's applied to steel studs. So the floor decking gets, the floors get poured and the steel structure's there, and all you gotta do is fill in with steel studs on the outside. It's not concrete block. Why do I say that? It's much easier to build and it goes much faster.
And to clarify, that is for the majority of the Unit C area that Dwayne's referring to. So,
Where you wanna go?
let's move on down to the next one there. So along the way, these are some progress pictures of a week ago when these were taken, of where the project is currently at in Unit C and some of the progress that's going on. Again, today things are ramping up. There's stud framing going on along here, additional masonry work in other areas. So it's a work in progress every day. We've also had the reason for the delay in Unit C is some of the adverse conditions that we've had due to soils to start with, extremely wet, extremely challenging winter with temperatures and rain and ice and snow, all at the wrong times, I might add, and even some of the warmth that we had through the winter was a deterrent for us as well for mobility to get around in that area. That site lays, it lays on a slant, if you will, and that makes it a little challenging also. So moving on to the plan that we've put together to accelerate the Unit C area, what we've been able to do is we've been able to increase our carpenters for the framing part of it to actually double what our original intent was there. And we've actually subbed some of that work out to another company, local company. So we've increased there. That's for our framing and finished carpenters. We've increased our laborers. We've increased, we're going to be increasing the manpower on our electricians and our mechanical, plumbing, electrical people as well. We've sat down and had those conversations with them. Another thing that we've done is we met with Dwayne and Andrew and their team regarding the installation of the roof on that area. And what we've done is went to a different plan for that, to adhere that down differently so we can put that down in some adverse weather conditions, whereas we would not be able to do that the way that the original intent was. So we actually were able to give the district back some money for that, and then that's going to help us in the long run. So you got anything to talk about that?
Well, what Mike's talking about, just to make it simple, a lot of times we glue all the layers, the insulation and the roof, but in winter conditions the glue isn't going to work. So we did this at Liberty, we're doing it at Lincoln, we're doing it at Maine. We're using what we call mechanical fasteners to attach the roof, the insulation boards down to the deck. It's every bit as good. It doesn't look as good if you're in a helicopter looking down, because you'll see where all those attachments are, but it works.
Moving on. So we've put together, and I won't go through it start to finish, but we've put together a milestone plan there of dates and target dates that we feel that are achievable, doable, and if we can hit those dates, we feel like we can get this project where it needs to be in this Unit C. One of the things that I'd like to do is I'd like to thank the district, because the completion date of the project originally was July 1st, and the district has extended that to August 1st.
Well, let's clarify it.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a change order coming to the board at the next meeting to ask for that 30-day extension. So
yes.
Yeah, what
Okay.
I promised you is I'd bring it to the board.
Okay, thank you. So we'll hope that happens. But anyway, those are some dates and milestones that we feel are very achievable, and we have sat down and put a tremendous amount of thought into that, brought together our whole construction team, as well as the input from our subcontractors as well. So we are confident in that plan. We know the project is where it is right now. We know that we've got 2 areas that are well on track, and we've got 1 area that is behind. And we understand that, and we're confident in this plan to get that area C, Unit C, brought up to speed and get it completed.
Yeah,
So-
I think at that point, let's have Andrew come in and give you his assessment of the project, and then we can get into some questions, okay?
Oh,
Your words off the mic.
That's not mine. That's
Oh.
somebody else.
All right, this is Andrew Wright.
So again, Andrew Reich, I'm with FRK Architects out of West Des Moines. So really, I'm here representing the district as your hired architect, working with Dwayne and his facilities team to really, as part of the construction process, we monitor progress. We make sure that the project's being built according to the drawings and specs, make sure that the district's getting the quality that they are paying for. So really, through the course of the whole project, FRK has been on site, verifying progress, working with Ken and Joe and Dwayne on the team to make sure that the district is aware of how the project's going, any concerns that are ongoing, and then just making sure that everybody's comfortable with where we're at. So as this project has moved forward, there have been some slowdowns on that Unit C, which the district representatives have been aware of. It's been a point of conversation for a while now. So really, over the last probably month, what we've been looking at is, okay, what do we need to do to not only increase the speed of schedule by the contractor, but how do we also monitor that progress and make sure that as the project speeds up, we're still getting the quality that we need, because that's a key concern for the district. But then also, how do we make sure we're reporting back to the board and making sure that you're aware of all the progress? So essentially, from FRK's perspective, we're now actually on site weekly, getting updated progress photos and progress reports and providing that to Superintendent Murley at the end of each week, and using by state contracting's updated milestone schedule to essentially say, hey, here's where we're at on the project. We're keeping up with the current milestones. Hey, here's where we're lagging. How are we going to fix that? And basically making sure that we're hitting all the individual milestones to make sure that the school district staff is comfortable with how the project's moving forward now that we've got this accelerated plan in place. So really, we're here to help the district and make sure that everybody's comfortable with what's happening. Knowing that there are some challenges left, that the project's going to need to move quickly, but I think that the plan that Bi-States has put in place, we're comfortable that if we can hit all these milestones, that the project will still be in good condition. So from our perspective, certainly here to answer any questions you guys might have about the project, and then in conjunction with Bi-State answering schedule questions as well.
One quick one, and I'm going to go further back on some of this stuff, but when were you first concerned about this project being completed on time?
Well, I think from a schedule discussion, working with both Bi-State and the district, at each monthly progress meeting, bi-monthly progress meeting, we talk about where the schedule's at. And are we keeping up with the schedule? Where are areas that are ahead? Where are areas that are lagging? So that's a typical conversation that always happens. Probably middle of last fall, we started looking at the schedule and saying, hey, okay, here's some areas where we may be lagging a little bit. Here's some areas that we're ahead. But we're aware that because of the slope of the site and some of the rains that we're getting, just got a little bit behind on foundation work in the fall. Now, as the fall continued, we got more into the winter and the harsher weather that we experienced this year, and working with Bi-States. Probably late fall into that November, early December is really when Bi-State brought it to us in the district and said, hey, we are behind schedule. We acknowledge that. We understand that we're going to have to work to make up this time. So it's been an ongoing conversation with the district and with Bi-State that, hey, we've got some ground to make up, we've got a plan, but yes, we're aware of it.
So there are emails to document exactly when this fall, and the fall, is that October, is that November?
Yeah, we do have pretty good documentation. Our meeting minutes for each construction progress meeting reviews the progress each time and does indicate, hey, here's where we're at with the schedule. So we certainly have that for reference if needed.
To answer your question, there were no really emails going back and forth to talk about, because it was discussed at the job site meetings.
So to my question that I posted where you said no, there was no emails.
There wasn't,
That's,
but there are
so
some
there's still
jobs-
no emails to any time when this was, that we can document and say that this is when,
Not last fall, no. There was job site minutes that he just referred to that are available.
to those?
Oh, yeah, we've got them all.
Are they audio, are they written, what are they?
PDF format, I can get them for you.
Okay, well, the board requests those. I want to, just with Craig and Dwayne, for a historical perspective, this site was brought to the board because it was considered more advantageous than the site that we had previously thought about building on, correct?
The site we had previously thought about building on was unbuildable because it had no road or utility access.
Well.
So yes, this was more advantageous than that site.
Okay. Soil samples and those, what do I say, doing our due diligence on checking that it was a suitable site, those were done. And nothing came back saying that this site was unsuitable for construction or unsuitable for building a building, correct?
No.
And those have been provided, and I know one is extremely lengthy, and I'm assuming somebody went through all the 100 and whatever pages, or 1,000 whatever pages, but I notice in it that they cite the SAS soil reports, which I can go to the SAS office and get myself, free of charge.
Yeah, but what we provided you is what we call a geotech report. We actually go out and drill some holes. Now, you can't do the entire site, it's too large, and it would be too costly. But we get a representative sample of where we think the building's gonna be. And I read it, I'm not an engineer, I understand most of it, but I read it, and my comment at the time was, we have the same soil problems here that we have in other sites, but it's not unbuildable. There's a difference.
Correct. And on that, on one of the ones I read, it gave a recommendation on where the building should be located, and I'm assuming we put the building in the recommended spot for the location.
Pretty close.
Earlier on, we were talking about our construction managers and them going out and watching the construction in the site there, and we're judging the completion by the amount of money that has been paid to the project.
I think that's a simplified answer because it's a combination of all these things. You know, it's experience. You're looking at a project. Is it going to get done or is it not? I've been pretty shaky about it the last couple months, but I think they've turned the corner. I think they're making some real progress. But having said that, it's a combination of listening to the scheduled discussions and the job site meetings, looking at, using your eyes and your brains and experience. And, you know, I've been doing it for a while, so it's a combination of things. So it's not just, is it 50% done because we made a 50% payment? No, it's just one indicator of many. Okay,
well, that's the indicator that we gave to us. I have been told, I haven't seen it, are there help wanted signs on the fence around the job site right now?
There is one there, and it's been there for quite some time.
Okay, so you have been seeking additional labor on this project for a substantial period of time?
Unbelievable amount of labor.
Okay.
For quite some time, yes.
And I also asked the question that has there been any delay in payment to either the architectural firm or to you for any of the work that you've done for the district?
There's not been any delay to us.
Okay.
As the contractor.
Right. Okay. Well, if we read the paper, we see the University of Iowa's into dispute with some of their construction projects and things like that, that people aren't getting paid on time. And I just wanted to make sure that that's eliminated as any concern for completion, is that there was any shortcomings on the district side.
It is a legitimate concern, and one of the things that I had a long conversation with Craig when I first got here is the secret to getting jobs done on time is to pay your contractors on time. And I came from a district, when I first went there, they were 60, 90 days out. And they wonder why people are dragging, you know? They're not getting paid. But I gotta tell you, between Les and Craig and the business office we have here and the staff I've got working, it's clockwork. And that clockwork helps motivate builders to get the projects done as fast as they can. And I think we're pretty good at it. I would stand up and say that all day long.
And I'd like to second that as well. We've worked with and for a tremendous amount of school districts over the years, done a lot of school projects. And one of the continuing gripes that we seem to have had is some of the slow payments throughout the years that we've gotten, 45, 60, 70 plus days. And that's one of the things that we've not seen here. So yes, Craig and everybody that's been involved in that, I think, has done a great job. And quite frankly, that's one of the things that we pride ourselves in very much so, is not only when we getting the payment quickly we like, but we turn around and pay our subcontractors the very next day that we receive the payment, and that also helps motivate them and keep them as part of the team and keep them on check and on board of what needs to happen. So.
Why don't we let Andrew tell you what he goes through in here and use a payout?
So just briefly, the way the process works from our end is by state contract, it has a schedule of values for the project. So essentially they take every line item of labor and material on the project. So I think it's probably 300 or 400 line items that's in a schedule of values. So you break out every little thing, including marker boards, material, and labor to install. So it's that level of detail. And so every month we get that report, and by state breaks down how much they have gotten done that week or that month, and what's the value of that work in every single category. So once we get that, we then review it. Mike knows I'm a pretty detailed guy, so I always send questions back and say, hey, what about this line item? What about this line item? Hey, I didn't see that material on site. You should send me a picture. I want to make sure it's there, that type of thing. Probably gets tired of my questions, but that's what we do with the pay application every month to verify that 50% completion that we're at, it's legitimate work that's in place, and the district's not paying for work that hasn't been done yet. So that's essentially what we go through every month.
Certificates for off-site storage.
Valid point. So the district, and its standard policy, is that if material for the project is purchased by the contractor but not stored on site, it's still valid for payment because they've bought the material. So if a subcontractor has ordered ductwork and it's stored in their warehouse, it's for the project. They can be paid for it, but it has to have insurance certificates from the subcontractor that insures the district and the general contractor, so that if something happens to the warehouse, it burns down, the district doesn't have to pay for the material again. So that's all provided as part of each monthly pay app. And that's just another way to verify that everything's getting done on time.
And I know it was kind of alluded to in part of your conversation. We want to build 100-year buildings.
Absolutely.
And no scrimping on quality or materials to meet a deadline or things like that. And if we're putting fasteners or putting the insulation down on the roof with fasteners, just so long as that doesn't mean that our roofing membrane that we put onto it, that we're going to have more of an issue with it. But our obligation to the taxpayer is to make sure that this is a quality building that will stand the test of time and provides a return on investment to the community that has put its treasure into this project. And I know that when this was during reviewing some of the tapes leading up to this, we were told that when the university stopped its moratorium, we had all these vendors that were chomping at the bit to come, and Dwayne said it was a windfall for us, and all of these things, and we set up all of our dominoes to follow it. And believe me, I know what the weather challenges pose, and this has been historic winter that way. But no one was coerced into signing this agreement. People willingly signed it, and the taxpayers funded it. And I want to make sure that we get a quality building that is going to last, stand the test of time, and that the taxpayers are protected.
I would like to address maybe just a couple of examples. One, the roofing warranty has not changed. It's the exact same warranty, okay. Same manufacturer, they stand behind it. We intend for that roof to last. It's a PVC roof, and it should last 30 to 35 years. It does have a life cycle, okay? The one part about this project that gives me nightmares is the reason where we're at today. And that is the compaction of the soil before you put the concrete on, okay? So what happened out here is we knew we had some wet soil, so we brought in dry, we compacted it, we tested it, gonna pour it the next day, but it rained the next day. So you gotta take it out and you gotta redo it. And it's the timing of those events that got us to where we're at. So what we then decided to do is what we have done on other projects. Instead of trying to put dry soil back in there and compacting it, let's use rock, just gravel, crushed rock, and put it back in there. So you're gonna get a change order next time that's for that rock. And that rock, when you take a compactor over it, the rain's not gonna affect. Matter of fact, the rock helps take the water away. So that's what's been done out there, and that ensures that our foundations are gonna stay where they're put. And prior to that, out there, and if you read some of the reports I provided, maybe you haven't yet, but we did settlement plates out there, and what happens is when you move that much dirt, no matter how much you compact it, it's gonna wanna do this. So we put plates out there and actually checked the elevations to a known elevation that didn't move on almost a weekly basis for a while. And watch that soil. We didn't start the construction of the foundation until that dirt had gone down as much as it could go down. So those are the things we do. If you don't get the foundation right, it doesn't matter what you do for the rest of the building, because it's not going to last 100 years without a
Well, agreed.
So that's what we do.
Okay,
But you need to know that we stay on top of that, and that's something
Well,
that's pretty tough.
and I remember having a discussion with you when we were looking at the design of this.
You know, like the X-Men.
I didn't like the X-wing. And I said that a rectangular building is cheaper to build, and every time you put a bump out on that foundation, it costs more money.
And I wouldn't disagree.
And you said that those aren't fun to build. Well, it's important that we build facilities that last 100 years, are functional, and are a good value to the community. And that our responsibility is not to provide for your enjoyment, but provide for our students and for generations that have yet to be born to use this facility.
Fair enough. I think that we all would agree with that assessment, Phil. We need quality buildings to support our students, and that's what we're here about. I appreciate the feedback and the mitigation plans that have been presented tonight, because I concur with you, Dwayne, the last board meeting. I was feeling pretty squishy about whether we'd have an opening of grant next August, and so these mitigation plans seem reasonable. A couple questions, if I may. The big part of your mitigation plan is getting enough labor. Just want to hear kind of your confidence level that you're going to get your carpenters and the drywallers and the folks, because if we can't get the labor, we're not going to get through the work of getting this finished.
We've already reached out and got the labor lined up.
So that's secured, you're feeling comfortable?
It is secured, yes. We've locked in additional contracts within the last 3 weeks for additional labor for the remainder of the project where we felt was going to be needed, so we have that locked down.
Perfect.
Yes.
So, and then my next question is, it feels like April 15th is sort of a big milestone. You've got a couple of subsequent activities that can't start until that roof is on. Actually, 3 of them in your schedule there. What's the drop dead date for us to be able to say we're a go for August or we're not a go for August? And back to kind of the reporting that you're providing, you know, when will we be able to assess whether we're going to make it or not? Because, and then my next question is, from a remediation plan of grants not going to open, how much time do we need to implement Plan B? So that should also be driving a go, no-go decision.
All right, so a lot of questions there. I'll see if I can get them all. If I miss something, let me know. One of the things that you don't have up there, and I'll just show you this, so we've broken down this chart even further, and we're meeting on a weekly basis. We met today, and it gives us an opportunity on a sub-level to see where each of these are at, what's ahead, what's behind, what's on track, which gives us a better idea on a week-to-week basis. We're going to be back in front of you at the March 26th meeting. And I know it says April 15th on here, but we're going to know by March 26th, based on these critical pathways, whether they're going to hit that April 15th pathway. So we're going to know by the time we get to the March 26th meeting whether we're on schedule.
I'd love an update at the March 12th meeting, too.
We will definitely provide that because we're meeting weekly. So we will get something out to you actually on a weekly basis. That's part of what we discussed today. You'll be getting a weekly update from us every Friday. So we'll know where progress is at. I will say that they are working over the weekend, and they're working in the evenings, but we're going to give you your updates on Fridays. And then we're going to know by March 26th. Now, in the hope for the best but plan for the worst category, Amy and I have spent extensive time talking about what our opportunities are if indeed we get to the plan for the worst category. So when we show up on March 26th, that's not going to be day one for planning for us. We are well along the way towards looking at what requirements we have if we can't hit that mark. You may be familiar with the elementary roadmap that Amy and her team developed for the movement into the schools. That was developed in conjunction with our building administrators and others to make sure that we've got every contingency that parents will be interested in covered. It's everything from transportation to nutrition services to before and after school care. We're using that same metric then, that same set of guidelines to do our contingency planning. So what school nutrition services things do we need to be concerned about if we can't move in? Where are the locations? What are the transportation issues? How does BASP work? So we're well along the way towards planning for that eventuality. You might look at us and say that could be time that's poorly spent if indeed we hit the mark here, but at the same time I want to show up on March 26th, and if we're not able to hit that mark, we want to have a plan for you ready to go.
So one last question, that's super helpful. March 26th is a big discussion for us. Is there anything post-roof going in that would cause such delays that we wouldn't be able to open in August? So the sheetrock and the painting and the finishing and all that stuff. I mean, is there any kind of critical path item subsequent to the roof going in that we need to be worried about from a contingency plan standpoint?
Well, I think regarding that, past the roof part of the project, that's where we've ramped up a lot of the horsepower that's to come, is for that right there, in case we get a little bit more adverse weather and we're pushed here or there. Those are a lot of the areas that we've sat down and specifically talked to the mechanical and electrical subcontractors and the framing carpenters, which part of those are our own people, so we've got control over them as to what hours they work and how much they work. And so we've got a lot of that at hand right now, and that gives us a good confidence level regarding that. So we've proactively, again, went out and reached and talked to these people about that and talked about what their workloads are going to be like coming up, so that when this all comes together at a rapid pace, that our whole team is on board and we don't have any lags or drags.
Okay. Any other questions from other directors? Appreciate the thorough presentation tonight, and we'll await our weekly updates, and we'll wish for better weather, and we'll keep progressing. Yeah. What's out? Anything else on this particular item?
Oh, no.
Tate.
Yes.
Wow.
Don't forget Tate.
Okay.
Walking through Tate?
You want me to?
Sure. We'll jump in.
At Tate, maybe a little bit more about the plan itself. Obviously, I talked to you a little bit about the change in structure for the gymnasium. We're also actually adding 4 full-size classrooms, a couple what I would call half-size collaboration rooms, a life skills room, a room for online learning, and for small group interactions, in addition to the fitness room and the extension of the multi-purpose room next to the gym. Some of the other things that are in the project now is that because of the pervious roof area of the building, we now have to improve our retention area. So that's one of the things that helped add some cost to this project, is we're going to have to tear up part of the parking lot and build a retention pond. But we're also going to take the opportunity to add some security measures and create a secure entrance like we've been doing at our elementary schools, where you have to go into a lobby, a secure double-door lobby, before you go into the office. There's some improvements in interior rooms that need to be made and some upgrades. One of the other issues there that we decided we should roll into this project is that building has what they call light monitors, those vertical skylights. We had them in other projects, and most of you weren't on the board back in 2012 or 13 when we did it, but we had some issues with those leaking and the design of those and the product that was used back then. We had those issues at Van Allen and Garner and North Central. In North Central, we think most of that got repaired. We've since fixed Van Allen, but it needs to be repaired at this project. And it's now starting to show some significant moisture penetration in the building, which creates possible mold, possible, a lot of host issues. So we felt it would be best if we were able to vacate the building.
I'll talk through that for them.
Huh?
You got anything else on the content? And I'll talk to him.
Nope.
So one of the things that we talked about was trying to make sure that this project could meet the needs of the students at Tate. And if you remember, when we got that first bid, it came in significantly over. We went back and said, let's pull the gym. We've had long conversations with Ann Browning and her team about the role that that physical fitness element plays in the campus there. So that's something that we want to keep. So when we went through and did our planning, one of the things that creates an opportunity for us is to compress the building cycle, which cuts the cost down if they don't have to phase through while the students are in there. So ideally, if we can remove the students from the building while they're doing that, we think we're going to get a much more aggressive bid package from them. So looking where opportunities exist in the district, you know that we will be vacating Hoover Elementary School at the end of the school year, and that we will not be taking any action on Hoover until after the vote in November. So we would like to propose that we use Hoover as a short-term relocation for our students at Tate. We've had that conversation with Ann Browning. We think that that's a feasible opportunity for us to decrease the cost for the project at Tate High School and give us the opportunity to ensure that we actually get that gymnasium added to it because we think that that's going to significantly improve our bid options as we go through there.
Okay.
Bueno.
Any other questions on Tate?
One quick one. The fitness room, is that a designated fitness room, or is that just going to be incorporated into the gymnasium?
No, it's a room next to it.
Okay, so it is a designated fitness area, so they'll be able to be utilizing fitness and the gym at the same time?
Yes.
Separately.
Thank you, Dwayne and team, for the thorough presentation on the FMP update. Is there a motion to approve the facilities master plan?
I move we approve the facility master plan as presented.
Second.
Okay, we're ready to vote.
Did we going to have discussion?
That we have had discussion.
Well, just a discussion on this motion. Do we need to approve this?
Yes,
Why?
because we discussed this at the last meeting, correct? We voted to accelerate this plan. At the time that you guys agreed to accelerate this plan, it was also decided upon that we would revisit it every, whatever the time length was, and that we would approve it every time that we went along. So that, that was previously decided upon that we would do this.
But isn't the approval of every project that we get individually enough approval on that?
What is your opposition to approving this tonight as presented?
I wanted my question answered first before another one, but I would.
I just answered your question.
My concern is that we're making some drastic changes here, and I would rather take them one at a time than take them all as a whole.
Again, which items are you opposed to? If you're going to vote against it, maybe I would like to know which ones you're going to vote against, or which ones you're opposed to the changes to. Maybe some of the other ones of us would agree with you on those.
I have concerns on many of the things here, and I think that we should take them one at a time instead of taking it as a whole. But that's my personal view, and you can agree with it or not.
I'm not disagreeing or agreeing with your view, Phil. What I asked was clarification on which ones you're opposing. And apparently you're not going to answer the question, so.
I'm looking at this approval. I mean, I guess maybe I'm wrong, but I'm looking at it as we're kind of looking at the total budget changes, not so much project changes, and we're not looking at you know, what design plans are going to look like, the various things, and we are trying to, you know, balance it at the end to hit the number that we said we were going to borrow against. And so I'm looking at as, yes, there's changes in some of our current projects as well, you know, and the funds that's going to take to finish some of the future ones. We're just trying to get to a final number, and that's something we're going to do pretty frequently. And as we go through one at a time to those various projects, I think that's going to be the time when we can individually say, you know what, this one's not going to meet the needs. I will tell you, as the example of Tate, if it comes back, I'm going to push pretty hard to get that gym done, because I think that was a pretty big deal early on that we wanted the gym there, so as an example. So as we kind of go through and look at individual ones that pop up, if I don't feel like that one's meeting the needs that we've promised the public, that's when I'm going to really voice my concern. I understand the budget numbers are big numbers, and it kind of looks like monopoly money to me when you look at it on a spreadsheet like that, and the total plan somewhere in the neighborhood, what, $330 million, right? I'm not going to look at every dollar in that. I don't have that kind of energy, but as individual projects come up, I'm going to spend a lot more time on those at that
But
time.
Sean, just to clarify, all of the numbers in here are projects that we've already approved.
Right, and we're just kind of looking at some of the, I don't know, I guess updated estimates for costs and are built into these new numbers and things like that. So.
Right, with the, like, again, just to be clear, so there are ones that we've already approved, so the ones without any changes are ones that we haven't had the plans presented to us yet, so we don't have changes on them. So again, the motion to approve this goes back again to when we voted to accelerate it. We, at that time, also said we wanted to go back and have this update and make sure that we were hitting those numbers and hitting what was promised, and that's what we're doing. So that's why that was asked to be approved.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and second. Kim, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Thank you. Moving to agenda setting, on the 12th, we have an exempt session where we'll have a discussion around our contract negotiations with teachers in physical plant. We will also have a board meeting, topics presented so far, in addition to our standard activities, public forum, agenda approval, consent agenda. We have a presentation on the weighted grade system update. Matt, I think you'll come back with that. We did ask for an update on grant, which we'd want to see at the March 12th meeting. We've got discussion items on certified budget and class size around the RAM process. Director liaison report, legislative update, and that's the 12th. Anything from directors to add to that? Hearing none, on the work session, we'll be reviewing the teacher racial diversity report. And remind me, who's presenting that, or just Chase? Thank you. Well, we've been kind of covering budget every work session. Is that something we want to cover there as an update?
Yeah, we'll add that to it.
Thank
I
you.
apologize, that should have been on there.
Yeah, thank you.
There's actually, I think, 2 reports through with mine. I'll be providing part of it, and then Sarah Brock, our partner from the university, is also going to
Okay,
present that as
fantastic,
well.
great. Very good. And Ruthina, you mentioned there's a P&G committee meeting on the 5th?
Yes, so we can provide an update on.
Will you have any new series to present? If not, we'll just wait for the next.
Yeah, it probably won't be new series, I don't think, will it?
We may not.
Yeah, I think it's still the
We're trying to
same
be
ones that we
respectful of the
have
time.
tonight.
Okay.
Going over some suggestions and edits that we receive as a committee
Okay.
and bringing that back to ensure that we're still on track for what the board would like to see.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get an update on the 26th.
And those
Actually-
updates might be really short, but we just thought it would be a good idea to keep them in front of you and the community as we work through the process.
Yeah, so we can add it, yeah.
What I was just going to say is it would just be helpful to have it as a placeholder so that you
Yep.
have a place to put the documents so the public can review them.
Absolutely.
We don't necessarily have to discuss them or
Right.
spend a lot of time, but that
Fair
way we
enough.
can get feedback from the public.
Yep, that's
Sounds
good.
good.
I like that.
And just, sorry, you said the 12th, but if we follow our normal board agendas, then it would fall in the second meeting, because that's when policy review is.
It would fall on the 26th.
Yeah.
Yes.
So can we not have it as a placeholder on the 12th, or?
And just plan
we
on
would
having
just
a
use
session on the
P&G agenda as the placeholder?
I think what Paul's saying is we have a regular placeholder on
Okay.
the 26th for a policy update, and so
Let's do it
we'll make
then.
sure that you're updated monthly on the work that we're doing.
And at some point in time, an IPM update worked into a meeting at some point in time.
Do you have a recommendation for when we would do that?
Oh, I would say sometime before we get too far into spring, because there's some ramifications from the discussion at that meeting.
So the 26th maybe, Monday, or
I'll,
IPM?
the IPM. It's an update on.
Let me get a date on that, and we'll get it on
Sure.
the right draft calendar, so it's ready to go.
Okay, very good. And remind me, Equity Committee?
26th.
26, okay, we'll cover that next agenda setting then. Okay, perfect. Hearing nothing else on the agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Kim, or all in favor? Aye. It's becoming a muscle memory.
Absolutely.